There are a lot of popular players on Nebraska football's roster. Quarterback Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney, Emmett Johnson, Vincent Shavers, just to name a few. But there is not a more popular name than the Huskers' brand new tight end, former quarterback Heinrich Haarbarg. And I noticed that a lot of people don't actually know what to expect from him at tight end this year. I think a lot of the expectations are way too high. Or maybe the expectations are way too low. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a big Nebraska Heinrich Haarbarg update, how he's been performing so far in spring practice, what his outlook for 2025 looks like, what his role is going to be, and so much more. So really quick, massive Heinrich Haarbarg update. Hit that like button if you're fired up. And also really quick, if you support what I'm doing here, daily Husker football content. Nobody does that on Husker YouTube besides this channel. Really helps me out. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, let's get into it, talking about the most popular name on Nebraska football's roster. Okay, maybe not the most popular, besides Dylan Raiola, the second popular, Mr. Heinrich Haarbarg. Of course, we know that he's transitioning to tight end after being a quarterback the last couple seasons for the Big Red. And we have heard a lot of good nuggets about him so far in spring practice. We'll get into that as the video progresses. But I want to get things started talking about what his role is actually going to look like, because I think a lot of people are confused. They think he's going to be a traditional tight end that lines up right alongside the offensive line, and that's not what's going to happen from Heinrich Haarbarg this year. Again, we know that going into this winter, he was 225, 6'5". In order to be a traditional tight end, he pretty much needs to get up to 250, and he's already put on a lot of good weight throughout spring practice. I'd imagine he's about 235, but he is not big enough to be a traditional tight end. So that's the first thing we need to talk about in order to predict what he's going to look like in this season. He's not going to be a traditional tight end. What Heinrich Haarbarg is going to be for the Big Red, however, is a Janiron Bonner slot receiver / utility knife. That's what you can expect from Heinrich Haarbarg. Okay, he's going to be all over the offense, in the slot, at wide receiver. He'll line up at tight end from time to time, sure. He might line up in the backfield. But just know he's going to be utilized all over the offense. Okay, he's not going to be a traditional tight end. And the reason why you're not going to put him at traditional tight end is because he can't block. Okay, he blocked fairly well against Boston College, against linebackers, but that was against Boston College. When you play Penn State in that stadium away and you're going up against edge rushers, linebackers for them, you're going to get bulldozed. I don't care who you are, especially if you're a former quarterback. So Heinrich Haarbarg, I want to get things started by determining he's going to be more of that utility knife, flexible receiver, flexible tight end, not necessarily the traditional tight end that maybe some people are expecting. Now, talking about him so far in spring practice, we've heard a lot of good things, and I've really been impressed with his physicality, the amount of weight that he's put on. He really looks the part. He does. He looks big. Okay, and he's catching the football at a high level. We've heard how committed he is. Like, he wants to make this switch. He knows that tight end is his future, that he could potentially make some money in the NFL at tight end. You know, there's not a player more bought in than Heinrich Haarbarg right now. We've heard that from every single coach currently with the Big Red. But I want to go back to what Dana Holgorsen said about a week ago, and it's that he has to earn everything. Okay, we're not going to give Heinrich Haarbarg playing time just because his name's Heinrich Haarbarg. We're not going to give him pity snaps like we did last year. Okay, because that's what happened last year. Let's be completely honest. When we put him in the Illinois game, we did that stupid trick play where we threw it to Haarbarg and Haarbarg threw back to Dylan and we got a completion for about 10 yards. Okay, we gave him pity snaps. That's not going to happen with Dana Holgorsen. Trust me, it's not going to happen. Dana Holgorsen's going to put the best 11 players on offense on the field every single snap. And if Haarbarg isn't that, he's not going to play. Now, we've heard a lot of good things about how Haarbarg's playing. He's with the 2 deep, been that way all of spring practice, so I do anticipate him playing. But just know this, is he going to start? No. Is he going to play the majority of the snaps? Probably not. Everything is going to be earned. Nothing is going to be given. But talking about him in spring practice, I really feel good about his athletic upside. Okay. He's already one of the most athletic tight ends on this team. Just, again, we know he can make plays after running the football with the ball in his arms. He can stiff arm a couple of guys, right? He can lay the wood on him. We can saw a couple of trucks at that quarterback position, so he can make plays after the catch. We don't, Luke Lindemeyer is currently our starting tight end. He can't really do that. So he already has a leg up on Luke Lindemeyer in that aspect. If he can continue to develop his blocking, you feel better about that. His catch radius has gotten significantly improved from where it started at the beginning of spring practice, so you feel good about him actually catching the football. And from a playbook standpoint, he's completely bought in. Okay, there's not many better culture guys than Heinrich Haarbarg. So you feel good about what he's doing so far in spring practice. You feel good about his new role being kind of a utility knife tight end. What can we actually expect from him this year? I would expect about 15 catches, a touchdown here and there. But if you're expecting Heinrich Haarbarg to play the majority of the snaps, it probably isn't going to happen. That's the bottom line. I think he's going to play a lot. I think he'll get on the field, but he's just not going to start for the Huskers. I think there's a lot of fans who, Heinrich Haarberg's going to start. He's the guy. It's hard to make this transition. It really is. When you're going from quarterback to tight end, it takes a couple years. Okay? And usually the ones who are the most successful at that are already, these bigger built quarterbacks like Tyrone Swoops for Texas back in the day, or Logan Thomas for Virginia Tech back in the day. Those guys were about 6'6", already 250 pounds when they played quarterback, so it made that tight end transition very seamless. Unfortunately for Haarbarg, he was 225 last year. So it would have been nice for him to have a couple years of eligibility. I think he could have been a really electric tight end. I'm intrigued to see what his role looks like as the season progresses, but I just don't expect him to start. But I do really think they're going to be creative with him. I think they're going to utilize him a lot in these jet sweeps, getting the ball to him in space. I think he can beat a lot of linebackers in man coverage. But from a blocking standpoint, I think he's just too much of a liability to put him on the field as much as some people maybe are expecting. So, Heinrich Haarbarg, that's the update. Playing well in spring practice. He's not going to be a traditional tight end, but a guy who does get on the field probably in that 2-deep, 3-deep role. But you really feel good about the way he's acclimating to his new role. And I also want to mention this. He's not going to be a quarterback. They've shut the door on that. So if Haarbarg if Dylan Rhule gets injured, don't be calling for Haarbarg because he is not even practicing quarterback. It's not going to happen. So let me know your thoughts down below about Heinrich Haarbarg, what you're expecting from him in 2025. Let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made this far in the video, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe. As always, folks, go Rhule. See you in the next one.